In a dystopian Switzerland, President Meili, the leader of the cheese fascists, controls everything. While people group together to revolt under his tyranny, Grandfather Alpo, a shrewd and mysterious man, raises his granddaughter, Heidi, in the secluded Swiss Alps to protect her from the outside world. However, the young lady craves freedom, which entangles her with the tyrant's henchmen, marking the beginning of her evolution and adventure. A rally occurs in front of Meili Cheese Factory. A woman tosses a cheese at the face of one of the guards, which triggers a firing squad against them. A few people survive, but Commandant Noor, a loyal cheese fascist, steps forward to shoot them. 20 years later, Heidi, an ordinary young lady, enjoys an intimate time with her boyfriend, Goat Peter, in a barn in the Swiss Alps. Soon, the man informs her that he has business and leaves with his precious goats. Afterward, Grandfather Alpo's voice echoes as he calls his granddaughter. Once Heidi arrives, they share a simple meal while the older man gives gentle reminders not to associate herself with Goat Peter. Heidi argues that she is at the right age to make decisions and requests to continue eating. Grandfather continues, informing her that there's a talk about her boyfriend's shady business in town. Heidi defends Goat Peter, stressing that they love each other, before walking out of the room. The grandfather sighs in concern as he knows the true colors of the man. Meanwhile, Goat Peter confidently strides into town while attracting the people's attention. He enters a dark barn house where he meets two men to trade goat cheese. After tasting it, the clients praise his cheese, saying it's far better than the Meili cheese dominating the market. On the other hand, the new advertisement for Meili cheese is being broadcasted as mandated by President Meili. It reminds people to report anybody who is lactose intolerant. The tyrant becomes satisfied upon seeing the commercial, but he suggests having more women in it next time. The minister also reports that the French are about to agree on their export terms. However, another minister arrives panting, and President Meili cuts him off as a woman comes to feed him his breakfast. After taking a bite, he firmly scolds his staff for being a minute late and dismisses him from his service, so the soldiers drag him away. Then, he resumes talking about the French and decides to invite them to the National Day celebration and conquer the world through cheese. On the other hand, Commandant Noor captures Goat Peter's client. He interrogates him with the aid of an assistant, Kari, who pours scorching melted cheese on his face. The man pleads to stop giving him cheese since he's lactose intolerant, so he reveals Goat Peter's name as his supplier and his location in the Alps for tomorrow's transaction. However, Commandant Noor shoves hard chocolate into his mouth and hammers it down before leaving to pursue the supplier. The next day, Heidi goes with Goat Peter to town. The boyfriend asks her to wait while he delivers something his girlfriend is clueless about. She waits without understanding what's happening, and soon, Goat Peter is dragged by the soldiers into the town center. Commandant Noor announces that he's charged with producing, distributing, and selling illegal dairy products. Then, he blasts Goat Peter's head with a crossbow. Heidi cries loudly upon seeing her beloved's death, so the commandant's attention is captured as he knows President Meili would love to have a woman like her. Heidi escapes using Goat Peter's bike, and Commandant Noor orders his men to capture the lady. Afterward, Grandfather Alpo hears vehicles coming. He plans to scold Goat Peter for bringing Heidi to town, thinking it's him. However, Heidi comes rushing as Meili soldiers chase her. Heidi is caught while the grandfather hurriedly goes into the house. Commandant Noor arrives, and Grandfather Alpo opens his window armed with a gun, threatening the soldiers to leave. The commandant recognizes him and mocks their failed rebellion, so the grandfather shoots one of the soldiers in the leg as a warning. However, the young soldier accidentally shoots the alcohol barrels in front of the house, which causes an explosion. Heidi cries as she sees the house blow off with her grandfather inside. Commandant Noor laughs mockingly at the result of the enemy's actions. Then, they all leave with Heidi in captivity. Heidi tries to release herself from the handcuffs, but another captive, Clara, stops her since it's hopeless. Soon, they arrive at Camp Alpenblick with Fräulein Rottweiler, the camp head, greeting them coldly. When the commandant presents Heidi, she tells Lutz, a senior officer, to electrocute the woman. Afterward, all the new captives are cleaned like livestock with a water hose. Then, they're given clothes and a piece of cheese to eat to check if they're lactose intolerant. Dr. Schwitzgabel, the cheese master, heads the medical test. When it's Heidi's turn, she spits the cheese. The doctor remains composed and tells her he can play Heidi's game. In the end, she eats it and passes the exam. Heidi and Clara get put in a cell with two burly women, Flora and Rosie. That evening, Heidi swears to Goat Peter that she'll avenge him. She also tells Clara they should cooperate, but the lady is skeptical. The following day, Rottweiler gathers the recruits for the Alpine wrestling training, their nation's most popular sport. Rosie and Clara are called for a demonstration of the most common move, and as expected, the smaller woman is thrown like a rag, to Lutz's satisfaction. Heidi stops them as Rosie holds Clara to throw her on the floor again. again. The senior officer calls Heidi to take Clara's place while Flora replaces Rosie. The burly woman swings her and shoves her face on the ground. That evening, Flora shoves Heidi again into a toilet in their cell. They're interrupted when an officer arrives to send out the 3 detainees as Heidi remains. Rottweiler comes in and puts a cheese freshener on the younger lady as she announces the arrival of President Mei Li. The soldiers prepare a red carpet for him, and Commandant Noor presents Heidi, including her background. The Commandant mentions Alpo's demise, so Heidi charges at him. However, the more hostile she becomes, the more President Mei Li becomes interested in her. He reminds the officials that Heidi will be the main attraction for Alpine wrestling this year. Days pass with Heidi and Clara undergoing the same routine: cheese meals, Alpine wrestling training, and being bullied by their cellmates. At last, Heidi refuses to eat cheese. She goes to her seat, and Flora teases her for not eating, which eventually leads to a brawl. Just in time, Lutz and the soldiers arrive to stop the commotion. Afterward, Heidi is sent to the isolation room where Rottweiler and Lutz confront her. However, her pendant drops on the floor, and the camp leader retrieves it while scolding Lutz for not noticing it before. The senior officer hands Heidi the cheese meal, but she shoves it away. The higher officers proclaim that she'll soon beg for cheese and leave the room. Heidi sees a skeleton in the room and sobs. Later, Rottweiler returns to her office where Commandant Noor awaits like a dog, asking for something. The camp leader opens her drawer and takes out a sausage. She dips it in cheese and shoves it into the Commandant. Soon, Heidi begins starving while Lutz shows her various cheese meals to tempt her. Then, the skeleton beside her falls, and she sees writing on the wall saying, "Long live the motherland," making her hopeful. She spots a bone carved into a knife and takes it. The next morning, President Mei Li shares breakfast with his trusted officials and expresses his disappointment with the ultimate Swiss cheese project. Mei Li's female servant arrives, and Dr. Schwitzgebel stares inappropriately at her chest, but this somehow inspires him to do something, so he promises the president he'll succeed. Mei Li also asks Noor about Heidi, and the soldier replies that she is adapting very well. Knowing it's a lie, the commandant immediately calls Rottweiler to demand Heidi's improvement since Mei Li is getting impatient. Later, Lutz enters the detention room, where she enjoys electrocuting Heidi. They are interrupted by Rottweiler, who commands the senior officer to leave. Then, she coaxes Heidi by returning her pendant. When she happily takes it, Rottweiler feeds her the cheese, but Heidi stabs her with a knife on the neck and takes the keys. Afterward, she runs to Clara's room, but her friend is busy eating the cheese. Heidi tells her it's time to leave, but the woman refuses, focused on eating the cheese. Therefore, Heidi promises to fix things before she goes. Meanwhile, Noor discovers Rottweiler's body and a bloody note on the wall: "Death to the fatherland." He and his soldiers begin the search for the escaped detainee. They corner Heidi by the edge of the cliff. He mocks her and informs her that he's also the one who ended her parents' lives. Commandant Noor gives her a choice: to return or to end her life. Heidi proclaims that nobody controls her destiny, so she lets herself fall off the cliff that leads to a waterfall. Due to this, he has no choice but to report it to President Mei Li. The leader becomes angry, but he pushes it aside since there are more important things to do. On the other hand, Heidi survives and awakens by the riverbank. She resumes her journey, arrives at a chapel, and finds an absinthe bottle. She instantly drinks it and becomes tipsy. Before she loses consciousness, she sees Helvetia, guardian of the motherland, looking sternly at her. Meanwhile, Dr. Schwitzgebel presents the ultimate Swiss cheese formula to President Mei Li and explains that this will make everyone who eats the cheese obey their command. However, Mei Li can't comprehend his explanation, so he leads him to the demonstration room. The doctor shows him the ultimate cheese and asks Kari to eat it. Suddenly, his veins darken, so Mei Li probes the doctor about the changes in Kari. Schwitzgebel urges the president to command the man. Mei Li orders him to stand straight, and he does, but they all see him looking like a zombie. The doctor still urges the president to order Kari, and Mei Li tells him to prove his strength. Because of this, Kari grabs the minister and tears his chest open. Noor shoots him in the head and he collapses. Dr. Schwitzgebel asks forgiveness, but President Mei Li congratulates him for creating the ultimate soldier. Then, he tells the doctor to produce as much as possible despite Noor's disapproval. On the other hand, Heidi wakes up and brings the weapons she finds from the chapel. Helvetia and 2 nuns arrive to stop her, saying that she can leave, but the weapons stay. Heidi fights them off, but she fails, so Helvetia calls her and touches her chest, telling her to heed the mountain goat's call and forget other emotions. In an isolated barn house, Wheelie and Goat Peter's father, the remaining rebels, are busy making caricatures against Mei Li when the door opens, revealing Alpo, who's asking for help to rescue Heidi. They refuse, but Alpo informs Goat Peter's father that his son passed away due to Mei Li's men, so they eventually agree to fight again. Meanwhile, Heidi trains martial arts with the nuns while Alpo and his friends gather more people for the resistance. As the guardians of the motherland and the resistance prepare prepare to fight against Mei Li, the production of the ultimate Swiss cheese begins. Soon after, Heidi completes her training and is ready to face Mei Li and his men. Simultaneously, the president arrives at Noor's office to look for the best candidates to eat the ultimate cheese. Suddenly, a wounded soldier arrives to inform them that they're attacked by a woman who says, "Death to the fatherland." Knowing it's Heidi, the president warns the commandant that this is his last chance to prove himself. Noor calls an associate who works in the Foreign Affairs department. Upon receiving the call, the associate excitedly leaves his desk and opens his dresser, revealing a Viking armor. That evening, Heidi's wanted posters are everywhere. While the soldiers make fun of her, the woman arrives and stabs one of them, chops the other in half, and shoves the accordion to the remaining soldier's face. Suddenly, the man in Viking armor arrives to face her. Heidi wakes up the following day, chained in an unknown place. Meanwhile, President Mei Li greets the French delegates who attend the Swiss National Day. Then, he goes to the podium for his welcome speech. Heidi realizes that she is in the stadium of the celebration venue. Clara arrives for the alpine wrestling against Flora and Rosie. As expected, she's tossed and turned like rags for entertainment. Then, President Mei Li announces the next opponent, who's Heidi. This time, traditional Swiss weapons are given. Clara and Heidi stare at each other as the female warrior is ready to face her opponents. Flora swings a primal bat toward Heidi, but she dodges it, making Rosie receive a blow to the back of her head. The audience laughs at the turn of events, especially the officials and the delegates. Enraged, Flora attacks Heidi, but she easily beats the burly woman. Flora urges her to end her life, but Heidi tells her they should work together. The crowd urges her to finish her enemy, but she knocks her unconscious instead. Heidi yells at the audience to awaken their consciousness that everything is happening because President Mei Li is wrong, but the crowd ignores her. Mei Li mocks Heidi, so she declares she is here to end the leader. The president commands Noor for help, so the commandant sends his man in Viking armor. Heidi cuts his bells off and he bleeds out, making the crowd cheer for her. However, the man charges toward her and attacks her, pushing Heidi to the other side of the arena. Fortunately, Flora wakes up and aids her in the fight, but the man strangles her and breaks her neck. Then, the Viking uses his mace to attack Heidi, but she cuts them off with her special axe. Without second thoughts, she decapitates her opponent, and the crowd cheers zealously for her, including the delegates who like her so much. President Mei Li rushes to bring the delegates to the factory, and they reluctantly follow. Once they're gone, Commandant Noor shoots her chest with a crossbow loaded with a small Swiss flag and laughs dementedly. He approaches Heidi and mocks her. Just as he's about to end her, Alpo shoots him with his rifle, but the grandfather misses and disappoints himself. Goat Peter's father blows the horn to warn the people to leave, and they scamper to go as the resistance forces arrive. Heidi stands and takes off the small flag from her chest. She smiles and grabs the giant flag. Then, Heidi walks towards Noor. She declares that this is her revenge for Goat Peter and the people. Commandant Noor still mocks her, so she pierces him with a flagpole to his stomach. Alpo rushes to his granddaughter, but she slaps him, angry that he lied about her parents. Before the grandfather can explain, she hugs him tightly and tells him how important he is. Right after, Heidi checks Clara, and her friend informs her that Mei Li went to the tunnel. In the factory, the delegates sign the exportation contract with Mei Li, and they praise his achievements. Dr. Schwitzgebel interrupts him to notify him that Heidi and the resistance are coming. Due to this, President Mei Li tells the delegates that they have to eat the ultimate cheese as a form of celebration, and they enthusiastically do. Afterward, Heidi and the resistance arrive at the factory and discover that the secret ingredient to the ultimate cheese is the milk from the women they capture. President Mei Li confidently declares that they can't do anything even if they know the truth. Then, he commands the delegates, who have become cheese zombies, to attack the resistance. The men shoot them with guns, and the zombies fall to the ground. Meanwhile, Mei Li can't open the door to escape, so Heidi throws a shuriken toward him. The president laughs when it fails to hit him, not knowing that Heidi targets the gas pipe near him. The steam hits Mei Li's face, and he falls from the platform. Heidi grabs the milking machine and stabs it in his back part. She tells Wheelie to open the device, and the milk flows inside Mei Li, making him vomit until he explodes. Afterward, Heidi realizes that the zombies have bitten her grandfather, so Alpo commands the resistance to leave the place with Heidi and the women. The granddaughter bids goodbye to him, and they head out of the factory, leaving the old man behind. Once they do, Alpo courageously presses the bomb remote, and the factory explodes. They all head to the Alps, where they settle with the rescued woman and the rest of the resistance. Goat Peter's father tells Heidi that her pendant once belonged to his wife, and he hopes it will remind her of the good things that can preserve her innocence. Heidi promises to keep it close to her heart as she leaves with Clara in Goat Peter's bike. The following day, Dr. Schwitzgebel drives a truck carrying the remaining Swiss cheese, but Heidi and Clara block the road. The doctor resumes driving, planning to hit them, but Clara fires her machine gun at him.